Hi, welcome back to the Weekly Why. This week we are starting the Torah all over again with the Parsha of Bereishit. That's the very first line, very first Parsha of the book of Genesis. The end of this week, essentially, we're ending the holiday of Sukkot tomorrow, and then we will be having essentially the end of the holiday, and then starting two separate holidays, Shemini Atzeret and then Simchas Torah, where essentially we finish and complete the reading of the Torah, and then immediately the same day start the Torah all over again, just to symbolize that ultimately we're never completed. It's always an ongoing process. And so the Parsha of Bereshit's Genesis is just, it's so unbelievably rich in potential discussions. Includes within the beginning, and just Adam and Eve, and all the way essentially the lead up right before Noah and the great flood. So there's a million possible ideas that we can discuss, but I want to focus on a couple in particular. So right in the beginning, in the first chapter, when we have the essentially the opening narrative, we have the 7 days, 6 days of creation, and the seventh day of rest, the Sabbath day. We have every day God's creating, either the vegetation, the light and the luminaries in the sky, and the vegetation and the animals, and every day, with one exception, all the days, it's Yom Echad, Yom Sheni, it has the days, and it was good, and it was good, and it was good. Second day doesn't say it was good, but only after the sixth day it says it was very good, and that's the day, of course, after man was created. Or be gender specific, human was created. So the idea there is that before we get so haughty about it, there's a specific reason why this day was above and beyond and so unique as opposed to everything else. And so I think the connection, we can actually look back at Rosh Hashanah just only a couple weeks ago, or maybe 3 weeks ago, is that on Rosh Hashanah, we in our davening, in our prayers on Rosh Hashanah, you talk about today is the birthday of the world, and where in reality, Rosh Hashanah is merely the creation of humanity. But realistically speaking, Earth really Earth really comes to fruition only when there's humanity there, because ultimately Rosh Hashanah we crown God as King, not because God needs us, but that ultimately God can do anything. But the only thing that makes a king is when there are subjects. So God was the ruler and the creator, but God only becomes king essentially when there are subjects there. And so there's the connection there that humanity, that the world has such an intrinsic value, but ultimately it only comes to fruition when there's humanity there to serve God and to really make it into something. And so the connection there, in Genesis, in chapter 1, verse 27, God says, "Let us create man." And so there's a lot of discussion there, but in terms of what this means, most commentators say he's speaking to the angels. The Baal Shem Tov, the creator of the founder of the Hasidic movement, says that when God says, "Let us create man," he's actually speaking to all future generations of humanity. And he's saying, listen, I can create anything else, but the only thing that I, quote-unquote, can't create myself is humanity. Right? That's the only thing where I need a partner, where people are an integral part of this, where people do not play a spectator role here, is that they play an integral part in the world coming to fruition. And so that's essentially what the Baal Shem Tov was saying about this verse, let us make man, is God saying, I can create the world, everything, but it was very good. The sixth day was very good, the creation of people, because this is something where humanity can actually partner with God in the grand creation. So it sounds very nice and lofty, but it's kind of a crazy idea when you think about it, that essentially we have an integral role to play, and we can actually play that role if we realize and if we step up to the plate in terms of our responsibility as humanity. You say, well, okay, I understand that. What are our responsibilities as humanity? So a good first step is also in this parsha, we have Adam and Eve, their two sons, Cain and Abel, where essentially Abel, he offers his choicest offering to God, and God accepts that offering, whereas God does not accept the offering of Cain. So what happens is, Cain and Abel are in a field, and Abel kills Cain. God goes to Cain and says, "Where's your brother?" And he says, "Am I my brother's keeper?" A very famous word. And so after that, he's banished to roam the world. And so it's very interesting, the commentators point out, is that God asked Cain, "Where is your brother?" He knew very well, presumably, where his brother was, just as God asked Adam and Eve if they had eaten from the apple. Of course, they knew. God knew that this was happening. The issue is not necessarily that we make a mistake, that we transgress. The issue is that we cannot own up to our mistakes. So that's the lesson here. It's not that we make mistakes. It's not that sometimes we get hot-headed and we hurt others and we hurt ourselves and we do things that are destructive to everybody. It's that we don't really own up to these things. And so the lesson that we need to be taking from how can we become a partner with God is to avoid the mistake of Cain. What is that? Sure, it's about not being hot-headed, but it's a matter of admitting our mistakes, and it's really owning up to something. Is that when we're stabbing others in the back, as sometimes we do, and we are treating other Jews and other people with the kind of disrespect and not the realization that these people were created b'Tselem Elohim, and that we see in chapter 1 of this book, is that when people are created in the image of God, if we're not really real with that, then ultimately we're going to make the same mistake that Cain made. And we're going to make ultimately the very core mistake that is the very essence of humanity's flaw today, and essentially the reason that we're not living in the Messianic age. So it sounds pretty heavy and pretty deep, but essentially what the take-home message for us is to say, the reason for the creation of the world was for humanity to serve God. And how can I do that? By being a partner with God. By being a partner with God in that we are a creation in that as well. So, and again, the take-home message for us there is that we have to look at others and realize they are created b'Tselem Elohim, in the image of God. And if we're not real with that, then we're not doing our role as partners with God in the creation of the world. So that's it for Parsha Bereishit, Parsha Genesis, the very first one of the Torah. That's it. Best wishes. Shabbat Shalom. God bless.